Hello, welcome back to Math with Mr. Hengst. Today we're going over a skill that we've learned previously, but this is kind of a refresher or a touch-up, or if we're still struggling and we're not really sure how to do this, this will be the video for you. So today we're going to be learning how to simplify fractions. This is very important going into not only Unit 2, but the rest of the 6th grade curriculum and the rest of, honestly, your education with math. Okay, so this is a skill that we are going to need to learn how to do, and hopefully after this video, this will be easy and you know how to do it without no problems. So without further ado, I'm going to get into how to simplify fractions. Okay, so I'm about to go over a couple of tips and tricks, but before I do that, I forgot to explain what really simplifying fractions are. So basically it's taking a fraction that you're already given and turning it and making it into its simplest form. So for an example, right, if I had a fraction 50 over 100, right, like it could be 50 100ths, right, it can be 50 over 100, but if we simplify it, more commonly what's more understandable is 1/2, right? I wouldn't say, yeah, you can have 50 100ths of my pizza, right? No, you can have half of my pizza. So that's what we're doing. And if that's gibberish to you right now and you're not really following with what I'm going over, don't stress out. I'm about to go over tips to give it more substance, right? So for my first tip, right, this is the biggest one. This is my go-to tip. The first thing I look for when I see a fraction, right, is I'm going to see if the numerator and denominator are even, if they are both even. So for example, if I have 4 over 6, right? This number 4 is our numerator, if we do not know those terms. And the bottom number, the number on the bottom of the fraction, is your denominator. Alright, so if we don't know those terms, that is what it is. Top number is your numerator, bottom is denominator. But following tip 1, I see 4 and 6 are both even. So what does my rule say? Divide both of them by 2. So I'm going to divide 4 by 2, and I'm going to divide 6 by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So a simpler version of 4/6 is 2/3. Okay, this is the simplest version of 4/6. Okay, both numbers are not even, right? 3 is odd, so I know that this tip cannot go further from here. Okay, so now let's get into tip 2. Tip number 2: if the numerator and denominator, right, if the top and bottom number both end in either 5 and or 0, so they can either both end in 5, one can end in 5, one can end in 0, just a mixture of those. If both of those last numbers are 5 or 0, you can divide them both by 5. So let's see what that looks like. So let's start with 5s, right? We can do 15 over 25. Okay, my numerator ends in 5, my denominator ends in 5, so I must be able to divide by 5, right? 15 divided by 5 will be 3. 25 divided by 5 is 5. Okay, so let's see if it's when it's mixed up, right? Let's do 15 again. We'll do 15 over 20 this time. Right? 5, like the first 15 ends in 5, and 20 ends in 0. So I can again divide by 5 to simplify this fraction. Okay, and I get 3 again over 4, right? So for 15 25ths, the simplified version is 3/5 when we divide by 5. And 15 over 20, 15 20ths, right? When you simplify it by dividing by 5 using tip number 2, you get 3/4. Okay, so now let's get into tip number 3. Tip number 3. Okay, it says if the numerator and denominator, again, numerator is top number, denominator is bottom number. We need to remember these terms. That's why I keep going over them. Okay, so if the numerator and denominator end in 0, if both of them end in a 0, you can divide both of them by 10. Okay, for example, let's do the one I went over at the beginning, right? At the beginning of the video, I said 50 over 100ths, right? They both end in a 0, right? So we can divide both by 10 to simplify this fraction and get its simplest form, right? 50 divided by 10 is 5. 100 divided by 10 is 10. Okay, so we can, this is a mistake I see a lot, okay? So some of us would stop here. But if we go back and remember our rules, what was that last rule for tip number 2? It was if the numerator or denominator end in either 5 or 0, divide by 5. So I'm not done here. This can be simplified one more time, right? Because this is a 5 and that's a 0. So I know I can divide both by 5. Okay, 5 goes into 5 one time. 5 goes into 10 2 times. Right? So that's how at the beginning of the video when I said 50 100ths, it's the same thing as saying 1/2, right? It's a simpler version. You're not going to say, I'll let you have 50 100ths to my pizza. No, you'll say, I'll give you half of my pizza. Right? Let me erase, because I totally did not mean to do a loaded two-step simplifying fraction for this example. So let me do another one. We'll do 30 over 40. 30 over 40, right? Both of them end in 0. Divide both by 10. 10 goes into 30 3 times. 10 goes into 40 4 times. So 30 40ths, same thing when it's simplified by 10, 3/4. Okay, let's go get into another tip. Okay, tip number 4, this is another go-to for me, okay? So it says, this one has multiple steps in this one, okay? It's not just looking at the end of the number. So our first step is that we are going to start with our numerator. Our numerator is the top number, that's 7, right? Okay, it says skip count by your numerator. So I'm going to skip count by my numerator. I'm down here. So we got 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, and I'm going to just stop there. I can keep going, but we're going to stop for now, just for the purpose of this one, right? So we're going to skip count by our numerator. So check and check. Last step, if you reach your denominator while skip counting, right? Do we reach our denominator? We do. Okay, so let's see what the step is. Next step. It says divide both of them by your numerator. So when you skip count, that means 7 can go into 28. It is possible. So let's divide our numerator 7. So we're going to divide by our numerator. 7 goes into 7 one time. 7 goes into 28 how many times? We got 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So the simplified version of 7/28 when we divide by 7 is 1/4. So this is a really good tip to go by. Like if you're looking, I would definitely start, see if they're both even. No. See if they end in a 5 or 0. No. See if they both end in 0. No. So what can I do next? I would strongly suggest trying this, right? Start with your numerator, skip count by it. If you reach your denominator while doing that, divide both by your numerator. All right, this is a tip that may require multiple steps, but it's very helpful when simplifying fractions. Now, if those tips don't apply to your number, or maybe we get to a number like this, or like 50 over 100ths, where we see that maybe it isn't in simplest form when we use those rules and it's multiple steps. Here's a way that we can find out this in the quickest way possible, right? So how to simplify this in the quickest way possible. Okay, so this is called finding the greatest common factor. Okay, so what I'm going to do is make a t-table for both 8. T-table is this, right? We've seen this before in elementary and 5th grade. Okay, and make it for 12. So I'm going to write out what I can multiply to get 8. So I can multiply 1 times 8. I can do 2 times 4. And that's about it. Okay, 3 doesn't go into it. So we're done here with 8. So this is the t-table for 8. Let's do 12. So we can do 1 times 12. We can do 2 times 6. And we can do 3 times 4. So these are showing all the ways we can get 8 with multiplication, okay? All the ways we can get to 12 with multiplication. So as you can see, both of them, if you multiply by 2, right, you can simplify it. But we're looking for the greatest common factor, the greatest, the biggest number that both of these tables have. All right, if you look at it, we see 4. 4 is the greatest common factor. Okay, so how can we simplify it? Right, we can divide both by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4, and we get 8 divided by 4. We already did the work here, is 2. And for 12, we already did the work again, 4 times 3. So 4 goes into 12 3 times. So our answer would be 2/3. This is a great way. I know it's some work and you may have to do more work than usual, either on your desk, on paper, however that may look. But this is a sure way that you get it to the simplest form, because a lot of, like in 6th grade math, they're looking for the simplest form. All right, they're not saying simplify it 1 step, right? So if you simplify this by 2 and put 4/6, you put that in as your answer, either on a test or STAR test or quiz, right? It's going to be counted wrong. All right, you simplified it, but that's not the simplest form. So this is a great strategy to use. Strongly recommend this one as well. So now I'm going to get into how do we know when we're done simplifying? So I'm gonna go into those rules real quick. Okay, so if you're simplifying fractions and you have that question like, how do I know when I'm done? I don't know how many steps I'm gonna have to take. I divided it by 2, but I don't know if I'm done, right? These are 2 telltale signs that you are done simplifying, right? If your numerator, the top number, is 1 less than your denominator. So for example, our numerator is 1 less, the one we just did, right? 2/3. Our numerator is 1 less than our denominator. So I know this is simplified. I know we're done here. I know 2/3 is my answer. Nothing else goes into both of these numbers except for 1. Okay? And then number 2, the next step you know if you're done simplifying is that if both numbers are prime numbers. So let's think of some prime numbers like 3/11. Right? 3 isn't 1 less than 11. Right, we know that, but we know that prime numbers, again, prime numbers are the only thing that you can multiply to get those numbers are itself and 1, right? Nothing else goes into those numbers. So 3 and 11 are examples of prime numbers, if we don't remember that. So since they're both prime, nothing else goes into it except for 1. So we know we're done here. Now what if we had, let's try 6/18, right? So we have this, okay, these are both, this is not, the numerator is not 1 less than the denominator, and they both aren't prime numbers. So I know I can simplify this. That's how we'll know, right? If I do my table, strongly suggest doing the tables. 1 times 6 gets you 6, 2 times 3 gets you 6, and that's about it. So we got 1/18, we got 2 and 9, 6. Okay, so here we go. Sorry, I messed up a little bit there. But so if you make your tables and you're looking for the greatest common factor, right? What am I getting? Oh, sorry. I confused myself. I'm sorry. We're looking for the greatest common factor. So we have 6 is the biggest number in both tables, right? So 6 can go into 6 1 time. 6 can go into 18 3 times. Okay, both of these numbers are prime now, right? 1 is not 1 less than 3, so I'm going to go to my next step. Are they both prime? Yes, 1 is prime, and so is 3. Sorry for the stumble there. I was thinking in my head. But yeah, so these are 2 telltale signs to know that you are done simplifying. Lastly, I apologize for the lighting with this on. I know I'm really dark, but it's not about me, it's about the work, right? So this part is for if your child receives the accommodation of a multiplication chart or math charts, right? So if that is something that they receive, something they benefit from, we need to be using that. And so there's no reason to use strategies with the chart to do this, right? So if the steps are like a little too confusing, sometimes we can get them, right? And it makes it easier. But for like bigger numbers, like 18 and 24, using a multiplication chart would be great for this, right? Because these numbers are not gonna be like the ones I did in the example, right? They're gonna be a little bigger. So we have 18, 24. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna go through each row and see if I see 18 and 24 in the same row. Okay, so I hope y'all can see this. I apologize if this is not that great. So 1, obviously we're not using the ones. We have 18 here, 24 here. We have 18, 24 here. Okay, we have a 24 but no 18. Okay, neither. We have 18, 24 here, and that will be the last one, right? So what this is basically saying is that it could be simplified by the number 2, by 3, by 6, right? We're going to go to the bottom, the row that is closest to the bottom, because that's going to get us our result the fastest, okay? Because if we do this, we're going to have to simplify again. Okay, so when we go to the bottom, these are, again, the greatest common factors. So what we're going to do when we find these to get our answer is we're going to go up. So basically what this is saying is they're divisible by 6, right? So we can divide both of them by 6. Okay, and if we just go up, we got 3 and 4. Okay, so 6 goes into 18 3 times. I'm going to rewrite it down here, okay? So 18 divided by 6 is 3. And 6 goes into 24 4 times. Right? So that's an easier way to use our multiplication chart to get our answer, right? Again, if they're in class at my school, right? If you're a student from my school watching this, you will get one of these in class, and they're laminated, so you can draw on them with the dry erase marker, right? So this is a great strategy. I strongly recommend if you get this accommodation, okay? If you do not get this accommodation, I would maybe try to do it the other ways first, because again, like once we get to testing or star tests, you won't get this. So I don't want you to be set up for failure, right? So if you get this accommodation, again, find the numbers on each row. Go to the one on the closest to the bottom, right? And go up. See the numbers at the top, and that is what it will get simplified by. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this lesson helped you get a better understanding of how to simplify fractions. I strongly suggest if you're a note taker, maybe go through the video one more time and possibly take notes of the tips, right? To kind of get them memorized in our brains, because it makes things so much easier when we know those tips. Like if we see 2 even numbers, right? We know 2 can go into it. If we see a 0 and a 5, we know a 5 can go into it. We know we're done if our numbers are prime, right? Or if our numerator is 1 less than our bottom denominator, like we know we're done. So those tips will really help us out when simplifying fractions. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, again, make sure you leave your questions in the comments below. I'll get back to those as soon as possible. And yes, I hope we have a better understanding, because this will be very beneficial from starting now to the rest of our education in math, right? So y'all have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.